that's quite a funny one, really, in the sense that I can't really remember us doing it. I remember being very. I mean, this was the first day in the studio. We went to Ocean Way in LA, which was Nigel Godrich. It was his idea. He's the man that operates the faders, and he had worked there with Beck quite a lot. I went to see him when he was working with Beck there, and I really liked the way the place sounded as well. It was really fat. Anyway, so there we were, and we were on the first day. We've plugged all the gear in there, and we needed to sort of test, really, and that was it. And we hadn't eaten all morning, and we were all pretty wired. And I actually sort of kind of, that's about as much as I remember about it. And we only really, we were sort of doing a track a day, but that one actually only took a couple of hours. And then we kind of didn't really listen to it again until the end of the session. Everybody just thought it was, it was like, well, it's just throwaway. But it actually ended up being something that was really kind of handy, because it was a really good flippant sort of, like, for us it was just like, getting out a lot of frustration, really. And it just, there was something about it that stuck. We really liked it. It was not, we just, if we, our normal cerebral selves would have not considered that in the running, really, I don't think, realistically. If it hadn't been for the fact that it was a test, we'd have just thrown it out on the grounds it was too silly. It was interesting, because the playlisting and the way that the record was put together and stuff was, we tried this thing where basically we did like the initial 2-week session, and then we were like in our studio, and the whole record only sort of took 7 weeks to track. And then it was sort of a few weeks to mix after that. And but a lot of that time, Ed and Phil went away with the tracks and were like trying to piece them together way before we'd finished them, because we kind of really needed to know what we were doing. It seemed like a really good way of finding out. It was actually like, well, it's going to roughly look like this. So we had a pretty good idea how the whole thing was going to look when we. 3 weeks in, and 2+2 was so obviously a sort of statement of intent, but equally in true Radiohead style, totally misleading.
I think, in a way, I think what coming to the end of a record and actually, the overwhelming sense of it is this energy that's in the performances, a kind of jolt of energy that you get, and that song really does have that. It's each opening track on an album always seems to it always is kind of the opposite of what the overall atmosphere of the last record, and so 2+2, I mean, that really fulfills that for us, I think. It's and it's the album is based around, is grounded so much more in the performance between the five of this time than say on Kid A and Amnesiac. The fact that you're there and you're starting up with this guitar just like cranking up at the beginning of it. For us, I think it's a very unself-conscious way of working, and I think that comes across especially in 2+2, really.
It was it was sort of written initially. The demo I did of it for the others was very, very, very slow indeed, and I kind of wanted it to keep that, and keep this sort of like chant thing about it, really. And really the words sort of weren't really relevant. It was just its melodies going round and round against each other, I'm not quite sure where that came from, but I think it's probably kind of a Mingus thing. It's one of my many Mingus hang-ups from another Mingus track. But then it just turned into this blooming, I don't know, rhythm fest thing. Because it was obviously not going to stay like that. I don't know. It's very, very old as well. I mean, it's pre Kid A, the initial idea for the song. And the Raindrop section just came out of thin air. I don't know where the hell that came from, to be honest. Got no idea.
That song, that was recorded in the first week of recording. It's that was actually probably went through more processes than any of the other tracks on the album, didn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we got the main performance down on on the day it was recorded, and then we had this. It was brilliant. It was used to it just builds and builds and builds, and you get to that section in the middle which just explodes into this kind of electronica thing at the moment, and it was just fizzled out at that point. Unfortunately, it was just coming down to me doing this very, very beautifully played, of course, but it was a very lacklustre pattern, and so that section there, I think it was just trying to find something there that maintained and built on that intensity as we're going through. It kind of provided a link through to.
Yeah, I think you're being a bit harsh on yourself about that, though. So it's just one of those things where we were playing it, because we played it live before we recorded it, and it was like you got a really big PA, and it's like we had a plot worked out, but then we took that plot into the studio, and we didn't sort of record it how we'd been playing it live in that section properly, whatever, with all the voices and stuff, and it just didn't work out, so we changed it. Yeah, but it was cool. Yeah,
that song as well. I mean, so much of what we set out to do with Kid A and Amnesiac was trying to find out how we could ultimately bring the technology in with the way that we played, I think, wasn't it? Which is a long process, which actually needed us to take all the material off those records back out and play them live.
I mean, all the songs are first takes as well, pretty much. Or they're all like one takes from beginning to end, apart from the obvious edits. And I like that song because of the James Bond beginning as well, with the electric piano sound that Johnny plays, doing the glockenspiel thing, whatever it is. And it sounds like sort of like beginning of Diamonds Are Forever or something.
It was a series of I mean, virtually everything on that track, scarily, is from one take. Except obviously the other vocals. I mean, all the instrumentation and everything. And when we were playing that live, we were getting this insane response, and we didn't know, because we went out and we trialled all the songs before we recorded them. We went to Spain and Portugal, and played all these songs. And sit down stand up always used to. I mean, it was such a joke because the last 2 minutes of the song, we just didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have a clue. Johnny was like sitting there on his big AS machine, all the lights flashing. Phil was trying to work out where he'd left the beat, and me and Ed are just like, well, let's just keep singing Raindrops, and hopefully people will think that it's coherent even when it's not. And it was, and that's basically what we ended up with, really. But then we went into this sort of thing where we had this. There's one section where I basically cut it all into shreds and put it through the laptop and spat it back out, and kind of thought it was really too silly, but Nigel was like, no, that's got to go in, and he was right. It was really good. It was a really good. It just switches into this other mode completely, like someone switched on the calculator and made everything quite rational, and then it's kind of not. I don't know. It's something I'm very proud of, but I just can't remember how the hell we got there, to be honest. Really, like with most things on this record. Well, it was written for my little boy, which I've decided to sort of be honest about, because it's fairly obvious, I suppose. It's just a very personal song, I think. I mean, I got back into singing, but as to where they were placed a lot of the time and how they sounded, I really left that up to Nigel, because I think he was sort of enjoying the fact I was just singing normally and not complaining, so he could just get on with it. I mean, that was I really love the fact that, I mean, I think that the band really did amazing thing with that, because I never thought we'd get it off the ground, because all the counting and the timing on it is really funny. I mean, I guess you can't hear it. Maybe you can't. People can't hear it, but it's just a total nightmare. And everyone's having to count all the way through. Like, okay, this one's 7, this one's 6, this one's 5, blah blah blah. But it doesn't really sound like that. They made it sound really effortless. So I was really happy about that. I was really proud of that.
It's a track that we'd had quite a bit of difficulty arranging. Yeah, because we can't count beyond 4. It goes beyond there, and but it's just one of those things that Over to you, Colin, on that one.
My brother Johnny says about it. It's generally, there can be kind of two kinds of songs we're working on with Tom. There's the ones which are sort of all right, and you do something that's really good, and then there's the ones like Sail to the Moon that, when you hear the demo of it, you could just put that on the record and everyone would swoon. And it's a real case of don't walk on the grass or don't step on the flowers when you're playing it. So you really just try and like play as little as possible to get in the way of the tracks. So that's one of the songs where you're playing, going, oh bugger, oh god, don't you know, because it's such a delicate sort of thing, such a beautiful thing, and it's great. And of course, it's got that great James Bond sort of Moonraker vibe to it. Again. Yeah, when they switch the gravity machine off in the studio and everyone's sort of floating around with the curly coily leads, like, you know, tethering you to your amplifiers and stuff. It's brilliant.
I mean, it's a stunning song. As with so much of this record, I think Tom's voice has really been outstanding, been a real feature. And on the CDs that he distributed amongst us before we actually started rehearsing, I think that was one of the standout songs, really, wasn't it? And I think it's, you know, quite a good indication of where his head was at during this recording. Because, I mean, to actually give those kind of performances, you need to be very relaxed and very confident in what you're doing. It just comes across in every single vocal performance, you know. I think Ed and myself had hoped to feature somewhere in this record, but
what was that on 2+2?
Yes,
and
that was...
Sit Down, Stand Up.
Yeah, our day will come though.
He can't sing it all live, Phil. Console yourself with that.
There's lots and lots of different interpretations. I mean, the lyrics are incredibly ambivalent, deliberately, but it came from a certain type of light that I saw, a certain type of smell. It's not particularly anything that it's sort of basically this pure blind panic, which I kept encountering in various different forms, and it ended up being this song called Backdrifters, at this sort of fluorescent light. That's really probably not very helpful. I can't really explain it. I mean, Backdrifters to me ended up being, I mean, if we're talking lyrically, ended up being very much about the slide into the slide backwards through that's happening everywhere you look. You know, where there was a time when everybody sort of felt like maybe the world was progressing and maybe we're getting better at sort of understanding other people, and ignorance perhaps was there was a higher level of tolerance and compassion and so on, and then suddenly someone literally flicked a switch and the light went on and everyone just scurried for the dark. And that's to me is how the best that's quite a good way of describing the sort of general atmosphere of that song.
It was the point when we managed to work out how to make all the boxes and machines talk to each other, I suppose, and I guess that's what happened with it, really. So if that makes, but I think it started off with a loop of toms of sound right at the beginning of the song, and I suppose it's, I don't know, Backdrifts. I mean, it's sort of like snow or whatever, but
it's one of those tracks that came out from when we were actually still doing the Kid A and Amnesiac sessions.
Yeah, that's right.
And initially, Johnny and Colin disappeared off to a different part of the house, and
sent to Coventry again,
and emerged a week later with this really dynamic sounding rhythm track. Really,
yeah, it was cool.
That's where the song emerged from.
Yeah. But it was, it was good. It was like part of the extension when we were working on Kid A and Amnesiac, where we tried to sort of split up into groups and into teams, which I hope we sort of get around to doing some more things like that again, because it'd be really good,